My name is Lindsay Cooper, and the title of this speech is The Evaluation of the I Have a Dream speech by Dr. Martin Luther King. The purpose of this speech is to evaluate the I Have a Dream speech by Dr. Martin Luther King and its importance in American history. The central idea of this speech is to show how Dr. Martin Luther King changed the course of history and earned the nation's respect and his place in history with the deliverance of the I Have a Dream speech. This speech is one of the most inspiring and influential speeches that was ever delivered to the nation. It was delivered on August 28, 1963, at the March on Washington. Dr. Martin Luther King delivered this speech to not only Black Americans, but all Americans, so that he could promote equality among the nation. In this speech, Dr. Martin Luther King talks about Emancipation Proclamation. That was signed by Abraham Lincoln, and that is what effectively ended slavery. But Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., in his 1963 I Have a Dream speech, points out, 100 years later, Negroes are still not free. This begins his argument as why blacks deserve equality. Dr. King states that his vision for America was for America to stand by the saying that everyone is created equal and that everyone should be getting along. This speech was the most famous and memorable speech of Dr. Martin Luther King's career. According to the U.S. National Archives and Records Administration, the I Have a Dream speech and the words of Dr. Martin Luther King influenced the federal government to take a more direct action to more fully realizing racial equality. In researching this speech, I learned that Dr. Martin Luther King was able to convey his vision of an equal America by repeating the title, I Have a Dream. By doing this, he was able to connect with Americans and allowed people to think about their own dreams and to draw inspiration from the words of Dr. King. Today, I will discuss the way that Dr. King delivered his speech and the words and emotions that he used to get his message across and how it impacted America. Emotions played a key role in Dr. King's speech. Dr. King's words were inspirational in themselves, but there were certain factors that added to his speech. The emotions that he used in his speech with his changing tones and body language added to his speech and drew emotion to it. The location where his speech was delivered, on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial, the memorial that pays tribute to the man who defeated the southern states over slavery 100 years prior, Abraham Lincoln. The mood that day was a factor as well, with the Black Americans thinking about their unequal rights they receive and the sense of guilt among the white Americans. Adding the dream that he had for his children to the speech helped to draw emotion to the speech and make it personal, and it connected with the audience on an emotional level. The act of mentioning his children in his speech made his speech not about himself, but about his children in which he loved. Dr. King connected with the audience on an emotional level by stating what he envisioned for his children. This provokes the audience to think about their own children. No parent wants to see their child go through what many of these children had to go through with civil rights. It gets the audience to think about the end of racism. Now that we have looked at the personal touches of the emotions that went into I Have a Dream speech, let's look at the technical aspects of the Dr. Martin Luther King used in delivering his speech. Dr. King repeats several lines over and over and over again in his speech, which solidifies what Dr. King wanted for the nation. By stating the same line over and over again, he creates repetition in his speech, which allows his message to ingrain into the audience, to sink in, and for the audience to really understand it. Dr. King repeats the same line of the title of his speech, I Have a Dream, to convey to the nation that this is his dream of what he wants for our nation. He states over and over again, let freedom ring, conveying to the nation that everybody must be free in order for freedom to ring. He repeats the words, free at last, which instilled into the audience what it could feel like to achieve the goal of equality among Americans. Dr. Martin Luther King's speech made an extraordinary impact on America and prompted the 1964 Civil Rights Act, which ended discrimination based on race, religion, color, sex, and national origin. This speech has impacted me on a personal level in several different ways. The first of which is I am a woman, and I can relate to the yearning of equal rights among Americans, because I still feel that men and women aren't treated equally, especially in the workplace. Second, I myself am married to an African American man and have children that are biracial. And it's very difficult for me to imagine what my children and my husband would have gone through before the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Adding a personal touch to the speech, such as what Martin Luther King did by incorporating his children, is something that I will do in future speeches, because I feel that it connects in a way to the audience, on an emotional level, and it empathizes with them in their situation, because many people have children, and it also humanizes the speaker.